Hello? Can I have your attention? Hello? Hello? My name is Annie Humphrey, and I want to introduce her to you. And I am an artist from northern Minnesota. I am the executive director of a nonprofit called Fire in the Village, and we do all of our work in around the whole state. And I do have a story to tell. I have things to tell you all, so I hope that instead of the really loud chatter, because it's really hard to pour out my soul and someone's trying to yell louder than I sing. So I just would request that courtesy, okay? I want to read something to you guys. I found it in my bag. I was cleaning out my little tote, and I found this card. It was about, I don't know who I copied it from, but it says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks in wood, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. And that's kind of like what I want to do in the work that I'm doing now, is inspiring people. This song is about, it's kind of about mental health. Y'all are healthy in that department, I hope. It's hard sometimes, but that's what this song is about. Days go by, I don't know where they go. They pass by and disappear down the road, and my feet are frozen to the ground. I can't make a sound. In the silence I hear the trees and my heart pound inside of me. Inside of me. What days would you choose if you could call them back to you? Would you want skies so blue, or the dark days that tried to crush you? Days go by, live them hard, before you let them go. Then let them disappear down the road, down the road, down the road. Sorry about that. So, thank you. I forgot, you guys, I forgot that there is a swear in that song, and my contract said I can't swear at you. So I'm in the song thinking, oh, there's swearing coming up, so I totally messed up. Okay, I'll be okay now. This is a song I wrote because, you know, I heard this speaker, and he was from like the 70s, and he said, like, if you can empower all the powerless people, right? All the people that are feeling powerless, empower them and you can make change. So I think power comes within. It's not about policy or money or anything like that. I think that it is from art, culture, inspiring people at that spirit level. And we can all realize that we're walking power. We just get caught up in being a good citizen or a good whatever. But we all have power inside. We are made of earth. Why do we think we're so powerless? Accepting oppression for so long, it's rewritten all our songs. Now we sing those lies every day. The truth seems so far away. Truth is, we are made of earth, we are power. It's not okay to say that shit's gonna happen either way. That just feeds fearfulness. Let it starve and feed your courage instead. 'Cause there's more to life than submission to authority. And then lie to yourself saying that you're free when you're only afraid. In the words of JT, we've been captured and taught what to believe. Let me tell you the answer right now. It's all in your head. Thank you. I like to tell people about my flaws and my faults, and no, I'm just kidding, I don't like it, but I wrote a song about it because it helps me. It helps me because we all have shortcomings, right? And we all have character flaws and all that stuff, and we'll see if I can play this song. Is it okay if my hair is tangled up and getting gray? Is it okay if I don't moisturize the wrinkles round my eyes? Is it okay if I say I've never sinned? Is it okay that I draw stories in my skin? Is it okay if I swear a lot when I speak? Is it okay that I got bunions on my feet? Is it okay if I'm in therapy? Is it okay that I write a song all about me? Is it okay if I wish my children were more happy? Is it okay that I failed them in many ways? Is it okay if I say that I felt free when my father passed away? Is it okay if I say it's my loves that weigh me down? And I wouldn't give up a single pound of the heartbreak that's come and gone, and the heartache that is sure to come. Because I love, because I love, because I love. Okay, guys, I got 3 minutes left with you, 2:59, 2:58. I hope that you all gathering together, there are hundreds of you, I hope that a lot got accomplished. Yeah? No? Shit. I'm sorry. It's in my song, I swear a lot when I talk, I'm so sorry. I have one more I'll share before my time is up, and it's brand new. I'll get through a couple of verses and I will, oh, the clock's going crazy. There's nothing to protect you anymore. Even your thoughts aren't yours. You've got the comfortable disease. Intelligence, creativity, atrophy. Let's go back to the pencil and paper and you and me. You and me. There's nothing to protect you anymore. Even your thoughts aren't yours. You've got the comfortable disease. It's in your food, it's in your phone, it's in your fear, it's in your bones. Even as the sky screams, look at me, look at me. The kids don't stand a chance against it, 'cause grown-ups are caught up in it. dousing the fire deep within. So you need to conjure a better life, 'cause the one you got ain't good enough. Where does reality end and illusion begin? Where does reality end and illusion begin? Mortality rate is on the rise. Keep on wasting away, or go find the cure, it's in your DNA. Keep on wasting away, or go find the cure, it's in your DNA. Your DNA. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Hi.
listen, about earlier, are we good?
Uh-huh.
I know that I can get a little, about things. It's nothing personal.
Well, personally, I admire your passion. And
And
I think you could work a little on your listening skills.
heard. What's this?
Vibrant and thriving rural communities.
Oh, okay.
What?
I don't know. Rural? I guess that's just not really my scene.
Why do you say that?
Someone like me? I don't think I would really fit in small town America or like on a farm.
I think you're making some assumptions. I'm from a tiny town in southwest Minnesota.
You?
Yeah, why is that so surprising?
I just can't picture it. You seem so current and relevant, and you care about justice, and you're not
Go on. I want to hear this.
white. I mean, when I think of rural, I think of America, you know? Not a lot going on, sleepy towns, a lot of VFWs.
Rural America is not a monolith. You are literally picturing American Gothic right now, pitchfork and all.
Okay, I might be, but I don't know. There isn't a lot of diversity, though.
Well, it just depends on where you are. I went to school with a lot of Latine kids, and not too far away was a growing Karen community. Not gonna lie, I did experience some racism growing up, but I experienced that here too.
Yeah, you're right.
And don't forget, a majority of Minnesota's indigenous population live in rural areas.
Oh, yeah, you're right. How could I forget that?
You know, the stereotypes that you have about rural areas can cause people in these areas to be forgotten and left behind.
Left behind?
Oh, yeah, by politicians, funders, the news, you name it. There's just access barriers that people in these areas face that, I mean, are not on a lot of people's radars.
Tell me more.
Okay, well, for example, you know, all the problems we have in the cities, the issues that we deal with, medical disparity, education disparity, job shortage, poverty, food insecurity. Rural areas have all that. But when it comes to charitable dollars, they're only seeing 7%.
Only 7%? Are you for real?
Yeah, and rural areas make up 20% of America. In Minnesota, that number's over 25%.
I really had no idea.
Not a lot of people do. You know, My parents owned a small grocery store, but business suffered when the big box stores moved in, and a lot of businesses in the area had to sunset. My parents' grocery store as well. Same thing happened to local farms, and then people moved out, and depopulation brings all kinds of other issues. There are some areas where you have to drive an hour or more to get to a hospital or a fully stocked grocery store. So there goes medical access and food access.
I read something about school consolidations.
Oh yeah, that happened to my school too. When smaller communities tend to can have fewer resources, and then surrounding towns end up consolidating schools. I remember when it happened to my school, I had to get on a bus an hour and a half before school started just to get to school on time. But beyond that, my school was a social center, a gathering place for sports, town meetings, flea markets and festivals, but we lost all that when the school closed. It was like we lost our connection to each other.
Oh, that's so sad. What ended up happening?
Well, it wasn't that bad. We ended up getting together, pooling resources, getting some funding, and eventually the abandoned school was turned into a community center. It was a meeting place again, and people started holding meetings and celebrations and offering classes, and we found out that there was all kinds of talent in our area and all these hidden gems like artists and sculptors and poets and dancers and more. And in fact, that's where I took my first acting class. But beyond that, it was really great to see the community come together.
How about this?
Urban-rural connection. I love it.
I really need to learn more about all this.
Well, you're in luck because there is a podcast called Funding Rural, where the host, Aaron Borla, interviews rural leaders from all over. And it's about to broadcast live from right here.
No way!
Yes way! But first, Mendy Blupaka and Tulea Palmer are going to say a few words. They led the working group that helped to design this event.
Right on.
Hi, everybody. I'm Talia Palmer, the president and CEO of the Blandin Foundation.
And I'm Mendy Blupaka, President and CEO of Fairfield County's Community Foundation. Tulia and I are thrilled to be here as the co-chairs of the conference working group, which helped plan and design Leading Locally. I know that I personally have already participated in some really powerful conversations where I've learned a lot, and we hope that that is the same experience that each of you are having. The working group helped to choose the concurrent sessions, the peer sessions, and the roundtable sessions. We also gave input on the wonderful arts and wellness and cultural activities available. I can't take credit for the puppies, but those are pretty wonderful. And we also helped to frame the themes for the plenaries. Can I ask the other members of the working group to please stand so that you can be acknowledged? And we also wouldn't be here today without the support of the conference's sponsors, and particularly the leading sponsors, Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies, the McKnight Foundation, the Minneapolis Foundation, and the Walton Family Foundation. Thank you all. And finally, last but certainly not least, we want to take a moment and thank the council staff. They really did the heavy lifting over the past year, and I'd like to now acknowledge them for all the work that went into planning this event.
We're really excited to be able to be here to kick off the live. I don't think I'm right in there. I knew I'd be funny after everything that I went through. We're really be excited to be here to kick off the live recording of the podcast, Funding Rural, that's hosted by Erin Borla of the Roundhouse Foundation. If you haven't listened to Erin, I've been listening to her for a while, and she's a really creative, innovative person to listen to, and really inspiring. And she'll be featuring Ash Hansen of the Department of Public Transportation, who's from Minnesota, and Winter Kinney from the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. And I've got to reiterate that thriving rural places, this is something that I care a lot about as well. On the way here, I stopped by the video kiosk to record a short video about what was special about the place where I come from. And I added a stanza to the Where I'm From poetry wall that highlighted some things about rural places that make me who I am today. And I hope you'll take a moment to share your story too. We're about to get started. Before we do, a few instructions. This is a live recording. If you haven't already, please put your phones on silent and do your best to reduce noise during the recording. Now give us a moment while we get everybody on stage and we'll get started. Thank you.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Welcome to all of us being at a live recording of the Funding Rural podcast. This is the podcast that explores how philanthropy can better serve rural and indigenous communities. I'm so glad to kick off season 3 of the show here in Minneapolis at the 2025 Leading Locally Summit, hosted by the Council of Foundations. Conferences like these, they're unique opportunities to gather as philanthropic professionals, to share and explore together how we center communities in our work. I'm Erin Borla. I'm the executive director and a trustee of the Roundhouse Foundation. We're based in a small town called Sisters in Central Oregon. I created Funding Rural 2 years ago because I felt like there was a lot to talk about when it comes to inspiring systemic change in communities that are often overlooked by the philanthropic world. Now, my listeners have heard me say this, and many of you here in this room may already know this, but philanthropy in the United States has a blind spot. While 97% of the land mass in the lower 48 states is considered rural, and close to 20% of the population lives and works in these areas, just 7% of philanthropic dollars go to rural and remote communities. And even less than that, 0.4%, that's less than 0.5%, goes to indigenous-led or serving projects in tribal communities. I think we as a society naturally create these divisions because we're looking to build connections with others that are like us. But the truth is, especially as we talk about rural and urban and metro communities, there's so much overlap in terms of need and both access to and barriers from receiving services, no matter where folks live. Now, my friend Win Rosser, I hope some of you know him, was a guest on season 1 of the podcast when he was the CEO of the TLL Temple Foundation in East Texas, and he said something that stuck with me. The word divide is used a lot, but the more we look at things, the more we realize that core urban issues are often core rural issues. So Win has since changed jobs, and he's now the head of the Higher Education Commission for the whole state of Texas. I miss his sound voice daily, that steady drumbeat around rural work and philanthropic landscapes and all of the things that we work on together. So today, I invite each of you, both here in the live audience and our friends listening to the podcast, to listen deeply. Close your eyes. Listen to our guests describe challenges and successes within rural communities that they work with, and find the parallels with the communities that you all serve. Can you hear those folks saying similar things? So there's a lot of work to be done, and I've always felt that that work begins with relationships. Visiting, breaking bread, and getting to know one another so we can shape a new narrative together. So it's an honor and a real treat to get to do that with all of you today. I'm thrilled to have 2 incredible guests with us, Ash Hansen, the CEO, and that's Creative Executive Officer of the Department of Public Transformation right here in Minnesota in Granite Falls, and Winter Kinney, the President and CEO of the Community Foundation of the Ozarks, based in Springfield, Missouri, serving over 60 counties in that state. So today I'd love to start by having you each briefly tell us about your organization and maybe what keeps you up at night with excitement or dread. Ash, let's start with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. It's such a pleasure to get to be on this podcast. And thank you for picking up that drum beat, because I feel it with you being a constant voice for advocacy for rural funding and the challenges and joys of being a rural practitioner. So yes, I'm Ash Hansen, Department of Public Transformation, not portation. And that's on purpose. It's a fun play on words so that we can join tables with other departments and say, hey, arts and cultural workers are essential infrastructure as well. So yes, our work, we work to develop creative strategies for community connection, civic engagement, and equitable participation in rural places. We tend to the intersection of creativity and civic life by activating places of possibility in rural communities, supporting individual rural arts and cultural workers through resources and networks, connecting rural artists with municipal and community leaders, and nurturing the rural arts and culture field through advocacy and storytelling efforts. I'm also a theater artist, and I am the director of place-based productions, and we tell stories as well through original large-scale site-specific musicals with and for and about small towns. So I have a lot of experience kind of being a practitioner, an administrator, and an artist, and an advocate. As you mentioned, our organization is headquartered in Granite Falls, Minnesota, population 2,700. Us rural folk love to tell you how many neighbors we have, so we always follow our town name with how many people live there. That's nestled in the Minnesota River Valley on Dakota homeland. And I myself have lived and worked in rural places most of my life. And I'm from rural Minnesota. I now call rural Utah home. And I'm really grateful to get to be here. There's a lot of folks that could be sitting in this seat, you know, as an interloper, one of the nonprofit interlopers in the room here. I bring a lot of those voices with me to this chair, to this stage, to this microphone, to this podcast. It's an honor to get to be here representing the practitioners in the room in this important conversation. So thank you, Erin, for having me here.
Thanks. How about Winter? Tell us a little bit about the Community Foundation of the Ozarks. You have this really unique model, too, I think people should know about.
I do. It makes most people want to run, but here we go. Okay, Winter Kinney, President and CEO of Community Foundation of the Ozarks. As Erin mentioned, we are a regional community foundation based in Springfield, Missouri, which is in the southwest corner, if you're not super familiar with the state. But we serve all 63 counties south of the Missouri River. We have 55 affiliate community foundations, which in a room of community foundation folks is usually when people kind of panic on our behalf. But also on top of that, we have 600 nonprofit agency partners that have at least one fund with us. Some of them have multiple or even 100 funds with us. And then we also partner with 100 rural school districts as well. So our work is complicated and intertwined and never the same, which is why I love it. I too grew up in a rural place and still have rural connections. Rural Missouri is all I know. It's the only place that I've ever worked and lived. And Erin, you commented about what keeps us up at night and or that we're excited about. So I'm actually going to take both of those. I'm excited that rural is in the conversation again. I am a little bit cynical that it won't stay for forever. And the thing that keeps me up at night, being about 18 months into this role, is trust. Because as the leader of a community foundation, you have nothing if you have trust, or don't have trust. Nobody leaves you their planned gifts, their estates, gives you their money, and grantees don't come asking for grants or scholarships if they don't trust your organization. And one misstep could unravel 52 years of history. So that's what I worry about.
Yeah. And I can jump in on the what keeps you up at night as well. So our place-based work serves Southwest Minnesota, and our programs reach across the upper Midwest, and some of our field strengthening work is national. So I have the benefit of getting to know a lot of rural places, and this idea, of course, that was mentioned in the theater production just a moment ago. Rural is not a monolith. It's not one thing. It's not one place. It's all very unique. What I'm passionate about is those stories. I'm a curious person, and I love that I get to visit with a lot of different rural people in a lot of different rural places and have a little bit more of that spectrum kind of filled out, and that keeps me going and is really exciting. What fills me with dread, or what keeps me up at night on the other side of things, besides perimenopause and the fall of American democracy and hypochondriac and all of those things, I would say is the year 2027. And I think I say that because the impact of what's happening right now in our nation is big and loud and hard, and I'm really worried about the shock waves to come, and I think especially as it's related to rural-urban solidarity, which is part of the conversation here today, and the zero-sum game that I'm already feeling play out with some of our funding partners, and worried that that's going to intensify over the next couple of years, and our idea of kind of leaning into this abundance mindset starting to feel crunched. And I'm a little bit worried about, I'm worried about 2 years from now.
Yeah. No, and that's very fair. I think those are things that we all think about, right? Even on the funder side of what does that look like in responsiveness? How are we responding to the moment? How are we thinking strategically? But when our communities are in crisis, it's hard to ask them to think strategically as well. So I really appreciate you both sharing. I am also dealing with all of the other things on top of those. So I'm glad that we're all in the same space. So I want to start today with a hardball question. Normally, I try to stay really positive and not dwell on all of these difficult things, but we live in a really divisive and divided time. You mentioned that earlier, whether we're talking about political divides, socioeconomic divides, racial divides, or those of us up here, our least favorite term, the urban-rural divide. So I'm curious about how each of your organizations are working to bridge those divides and build connections with the communities you serve. You talk about building trust.
I can start with that one, and I immediately go to, I kind of don't even, we have to acknowledge it, so let me start there, but then I don't lead with it, or I don't start, because we want to start, our organization wants to start from a place of strength with all of our affiliate community foundations and what's going well in those communities, so not the deficit thinking for them, or to Ash's point of a zero-sum game. And something that my predecessor said a lot, which I continue to carry with me, is I've never met anyone that didn't want their community to be better. Literally, no one in 20 years of doing this work. We might not have the same idea about exactly how to get to the community being better, but that if you stay centered in that's what folks want and are after and want a better life for their children than they had or for the next generation, and you just keep coming back to that, the rest of it, it doesn't go away, but it continues. It just keeps that at the center and that at the top so that you don't get stuck in all of those other pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Ash, I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that with the kind of social fabric disintegrating, and I think feeling that really acutely in rural places, specifically with the loss of community gathering spaces, I want to highlight one of our programs, Activate Rural, which works to transform underutilized spaces into creative community gathering spaces. So for us, it's really about resourcing the people who are trying to find ways to bring people together, and not telling anybody how to do that, but saying, like, you know how to bring your community together best. We possibly have some tools or access to resources we can channel through to get you to a place where you have more community gathering spaces, doing it the way that you know how to do best and the way that you want to do it, to bring folk together. Again, leading not, like what Winter said as well, like from a place of divide, but building things together rather than sitting around in dialogue conversations discussing our differences, but saying, like, hey, let's work towards a shared vision, something that we feel we're all excited to see this Exodus building on Main Street, for example, transformed into something that's community-driven or community-led, is going to, I think, bring us together a lot more quickly, but also more sustainably, solidly build a stronger foundation in our communities. And I think, I've seen a trend in philanthropy recently to move away from supporting individuals or funding organizations that are supporting individuals, and just to say that, in rural places, it's those individual folks or a small group of people making things happen more so than organizations. So releasing some of those tight strings around getting resources to the person or the people making those big movements to bring folks together, I think is a huge need in the field right now.
So with your background in arts and theater and the focus of your organization's work as arts and culture workers really being the center, it's all about listening to those stories that rural people and communities tell about themselves, the stories that are told about them as well. In an episode last season with Andy Mink, who's the director of the Smithsonian Institute's Rural Initiative, he used the phrase belonging in security. He was a previous middle school teacher, and I used to work in middle schools as well, and so we made that correlation of like, oh my gosh, how we feel as middle school students is often how rural communities feel, where they just don't know the stories that are told about them helps design who they are as themselves or what they think of themselves. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about when identity is tied together and how people hear the stories of themselves, making them think that story about their community. Maybe examining the narrative a little bit.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics. I wish we had a bottle of whiskey and a bonfire, and we could go for a long time. But here we are with a smoke machine, which is great.
It's close.
Close, right? We'll pretend. So, this is why I love being a theater artist, and this is why I love working with artists, is that what we're often doing is showing different perspectives of the same story. And, I think the damaging narratives that are put upon rural places that have permeated our psyches are real and really hard to overcome. One of my favorite storytellers, his name is Martin Shaw. He's an amazing mythologist and just kind of like deconstructs folk tales from around the world. He has this quote, "Good storytellers cast spells. Great storytellers break them." And I think what we need right now is a lot of great storytellers breaking the spells that have been put upon rural America. And fortunately, we have the privilege of working with a lot of powerful witches out in rural places, making some cool spells happening. And so I think the benefit of working with artists so I'm in rooms like this and I'm talking about rural and I'm talking about arts, and often the eyes glaze over. And I don't understand it because I'm like, hold on, we do have a magic wand. We do have a tool that y'all could really, you're like, how do we get people together and how are they having fun? We're like, we know how to do that. And especially in rural places, like we get relationship, we know how hard it is. And yet there's often this kind of like, oh, rural, oh, arts, like that's not really my lane. But this desire to stoke the flames of desire to learn from ruralness and not the other way around, because we are doing that hard work of breaking the spell that has been put upon us. And I think that is essential to shifting what's happening in this fracturing of our country, or blame placing that's happening, especially when it comes to the propaganda and the national media about who's responsible for what. So there's some great spellcasters, there's some great storytellers, and shifting that narrative is something we're thinking about a lot. But whiskey and a bonfire, I think, is where we go next.
I feel like that's where we should start every conversation. Whiskey and a bonfire. So Winter, you're doing a lot of narrative work, and when folks come in to Missouri and they want to do wonderful work in the communities that you work with that maybe worked in another place, what's your go-to when you work with people that are like, I have the next best idea for Missouri? How do you work with folks like that?
No. No. I don't start with that. I did come up on the development side of things in Community Foundation, so before I stress anybody out, Missourians should create the next best thing for Missourians, or they have that, they know. And so, though I grew up in a rural place, I live in the regional hub of 200,000 people. So even now, when I appear in our affiliate places, I have to be careful of what I say. And in the ethos of our organization is we don't come here to tell you what to do or what to make your community better or how to make your community better. We come with the resources and the structure to help make it happen, but you all need to decide in your place how to make this better. So if I would love, and people are moving into rural Missouri, but they need to build the relationships and go to the arts events and all the other things that are happening to learn about that community and the culture and the people there before any assumptions are made. That seems so very obvious to me, but I know that it's not. It's not for everyone. And in 55 affiliate community foundations, every single one of those has a different personality. And so it's 5.5 hours to drive from one part of the state to the other part of the state, and they look vastly different. So my short answer is no, let's not do that. But there are ways to invite people to be a part of the conversation and again, wanting to make the community better.
And some of that comes from connection too. So just because we don't want to replicate the exact same thing in the exact same way in each community doesn't mean we can't connect those folks, right? So if you're working in childcare or in food distribution and you're working in a silo because you're working in crisis in your community that's 500, 3,000, 5,000 people, there are other people that do that work. So building those bridges between community, between foundations is an opportunity for all of us to step in and say, hey, I see that you're struggling. We have a community in northeastern Oregon that I went to visit their brand new food bank facility. It was 8,000 square feet, and they had just bought a mopping machine, and they were so excited. And they'd been there for 2 years and been hand mopping an 8,000 square foot warehouse because they just didn't know a mopping machine existed. So those types of things, we can have connections and be able to say, hey, I think we have some solutions for you, and maybe we could pay for that mopping machine for you. So I know that's very much a simple sort of explanation, but it is that moment of how do we build collaboration and connection, right? And I know we use this phrase a lot, but the rural is not a monolith. Monolith is everyone's favorite term. But there is this rural ethos, right? There's a set of values that bind rural and remote communities together. So what values do you all see leading rural people? How are they different from urban values? How are they ranked? Do we have similar values? What do they look like? How does philanthropy better understand and connect with those values? Winter, let's start with you.
So I immediately want to turn to anybody in the room, although I can't see you, and say, if you're from an urban area, I don't know what your values are because I've never lived in an urban place. So I also can't and shouldn't make any assumptions there. But rural, resilient, extremely resilient, want to take care of their neighbors, themselves. They don't want anyone to come in and tell them how to do it or what to do. And in Missouri, there's a reason we're called the Show Me State. We're a little bit cynical, and I'm Ozarkian to my core, and so I'm a little bit cynical of things, so that's where that good old show me comes in. And hard work, right? I mean, even as the three of us have visited, I have told you all the story, and we'll tell it here of my mom is both extremely proud of me in this role and career and life I have built, and also there's just a little bit of her that also thinks I've maybe gotten too good for her. And that's an interesting dichotomy that comes, at least in rural Missouri, that we have to work through.
Yeah, I think what comes to mind when you're talking about that is the poppy syndrome. Do you all know this? When the one poppy grows too tall, that's the poppy that gets the head chopped off. I think humility is a better or more accurate way of saying that. Like we do this together, and if you stick yourself out above or in any way that shows like I'm better or I know better, that's just not a strong value in rural places. It's much more about humility and doing it together. So how are we, working with our aunties and our grandmas and doing this together and not saying like, here's where we go. I have done that and I have learned my lesson. Moving with rather than moving ahead of anybody is really a long game. And our mission at Department of Public Transformation, our vision rather, is a 150-year vision statement, and it's generational work, and we know this so well in rural places. And I think that this idea of if you really do want to partner up with folks in rural places and make long-term impact and change, like how cool would it be if you were like, yes, and we're going to go on a 150-year-long journey with you. We're going to fund this work or this region or this idea or this way. And adjust with the times when robots take over and everything else, there'll be a whole different system. But for now, looking ahead and looking backwards, both in our remembering and imagining what's possible, building rural futures together takes a long time. I think it takes even longer when we're talking about, the long history of extraction and having been done to for so many years. A lot of the wealth that is existing in the endowments in this room, of course, were built off of Black, Brown, Indigenous, and rural folks. And how are we getting that money back out? And how are we doing it in a way that is going to sustain these communities into the future? It's going to be a long road of healing and repair, as we heard earlier today. But it starts now. It starts now.
Yeah. Well, and I think building relationships, right? Those are the things, but recognizing how we step into those places, what role we have within our own organization, how we show up in communities, and that can be more than just our outward appearance, although there is a piece to that. Winter, did you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I told Erin this previously. I would never wear what I have on right now to any of our affiliate community foundation places. I would stick out like a sore thumb right off the bat. I'm already an outsider to them, and I don't need to highlight that anymore. And even again, 63 counties, all the state, certain communities is different than others. So I'm very aware of that and my clothing choices even in those places. And I've experienced walking in to Cookies, which if you're ever in Golden City, Missouri, you should eat at Cookies and have a piece of pie. But literally when the door was opened and I walked in to meet someone who was there, the whole diner got quiet and looked around and immediately were like, she's not from here, because it's population 600, and they knew I immediately wasn't there. But I also had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah. In addition to our grant making, in Oregon, we own and operate a 260-acre working ranch on the urban-rural divide, which means we're behind the tire shop in town. But I would go to different events and meet with other ranchers. We do a lot of work in regenerative farming. We do all sorts of things like that. And I've had people tell me directly, well, I'm a real rancher. Oh, cool. So the work that I've done growing up, with horses and hogs and all the other things, you have to get to that point. So it's building that relationship and showing up as your full self in those moments. So folks that are coming from philanthropy or coming from a larger community, that's a big leap, and it's hard to be in those places, and there is a barrier to break through. We talk in philanthropy broadly about trusted messengers, right? Those with the cultural competencies to understand nuances in different cultures. But oftentimes that rural competency we kind of overlook. We overlook the values and cultural constructs that happen in those rural places, that living in a remote community of 600 or 200, that you have to be able to understand and work through that. Why do you think that we don't talk about those rural competencies at all?
I think that there's a There's a little bit of a mirror that we have, and when I'm talking about we, I'm talking about non-rural folks. Like rural folks talk about it all the time, but non-rural folks, which is what I call urban, and non-rural folk, like there's a mirror that has to be held up here, and it's maybe an uncomfortable one to look at, where you're like, the only thing that's different between you and I is that I have fewer neighbors, yet I have a lot more hurdles and barriers to overcome because of the historic disinvestment in our place. And so I think it forces us to kind of have to really look at that and say, like, wait, what is it about this place that makes me so uncomfortable? Is it the wide open space? Is it like something biological in us where we're like, I don't feel like I can hide anywhere here. Like I stick out. There's no anonymity. But I think it does make us have to really be uncomfortable in a way that maybe we don't really know how to grapple with or understand when we're coming from a non-rural place to a rural place. And I think our challenges, our preconceptions get challenged really quickly. And hopefully in a good way, and maybe sometimes in a way that affirms certain things. One way that I always like to talk about it in my theater work is calling it what's the thing behind the thing. So if I meet somebody in a rural place that has vastly different ideas or values than I do, I'm always looking for how to get at what's the thing behind the anger, what's the thing behind the fear, and often it's grief and loss, and that's a place where we can connect, and that's a place where we can start to build and heal together. So if you're really angry about the change that's happening, oftentimes there's a story of what was lost in the family or in the community or by that person that is causing that anger to appear. But it takes a long time to get to that story. And I don't think that in non-rural environments, that kind of time is available. When we do get visited, very rarely by funding partners or folks, rural curious folks, it's usually a fast meeting, and that's not how this works. Like it's a long. You got to sit for a while, and that can be uncomfortable, or we just don't have time to do it. So it's a little bit of a rambling answer, I think, but I think there's that part of it that is just like it causes us to look at the harm that has been caused and what our role in it is, and challenge some of our misconceptions in a way that might make us uncomfortable. I think that's part of it.
I think the only thing I would add there is I think we don't talk about it because we often don't talk about that you have to be curious. You have to show up with an open heart and an open mind, and sometimes being curious is hard. But I really loved Ash's comment about the time, because the time, being in the car and driving to wherever it is, multiple times. I think of a tiny school foundation that we helped start 15 years ago. And it took 8 trips from Springfield to Chadwick, Missouri, which is about 45 minutes down 2-lane roads, 45 minutes to an hour. And they finally opened a fund for their tiny little school foundation with $500 in it. And some people would say that wasn't worth it. Like, why did you make 8 trips? Well, because we ended up helping get them a FEMA storm shelter that was a gymnasium, because we knew we had access to resources that they needed, but it took 8 trips because they didn't really believe us, that we were there to help and not do something to them. So it is the time investment, which is everyone's number one resource these days, is time.
Right, and it takes folks that live in those places, they're making those drives daily, weekly, consistently, and we're asking that of them, especially in the philanthropic side and in our government partners as well. We're asking folks to come to us. And it's an opportunity for us to get out into community and build relationship and really dig in and see what folks are working on. I wanted to highlight that you talked about historic disinvestment, and I think that's another one of those parallels that we can look at in inner city communities and other communities where we see that there's more common humanity between rural places and urban places than we give credit to. And I really love digging in on that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about barriers to services in general. Across the country, we talk a lot about loneliness and isolation, and they've become a health emergency, right? They say that loneliness epidemic is similar to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's a rough epidemic that we're in, and we are facing that from our young folks to our elders across the country. It's definitely a theme we'll be exploring in this next season of the podcast with a variety of different populations. You know, Ash, you talked about grief and loss bringing people together. I got to the airport yesterday on my way here, and I got through the security checkpoint, and my phone rang, and it was our Victims Assistance Agency, and we lost a student. And that is so hard. It's hard everywhere, but it's so hard in rural. This is our third student in 2 years in a community that has less than 1,000 students in the whole school district. It is devastating. And philanthropy, when we build relationships in community, we're the first phone call. So how do we talk about bringing people together? What are you all doing to help build community and really dig in so folks have people to lean on and they know who they can call? Ash, let's start with you.
I'm really sorry that happened, first of all.
Yeah.
We're all holding a lot, and tragedy is every day, so I'm really sorry. We were discussing earlier about the former Surgeon General talking about the loneliness epidemic, and I was at a gathering in DC a couple of years ago about community health, and the arts were a big part of that. And the Surgeon General said, art is medicine, and joy is vital to our health, something along those lines. I didn't have the exact quote, but art is medicine. And you know, I think earlier I said we have a magic wand, and I want to say, like, we have some magic. Maybe I don't want to say we have a magic wand, because I don't think it's a fix-all. But I do think that we have a really powerful tool in working with arts and cultural workers available to us that has the capacity to bring folks together in a really meaningful way, and it's always or often the first to go. And I think, you know, where folks find healing or therapy or expression or identity or community around certain forms of expression, or just hearing each other in forms of story or music or dance, there's less places and opportunities to do that. So I'm not going to say that, you know, by investing in artists that we will then, you know, immediately solve all of the mental health crisis in rural America. But I do think that when we're working within different sectors, like the public health services or mental health services or affordable housing or education, looking to arts and cultural workers to help discover new ways to engage with your community, to bring new approaches to bringing folks together, to allowing folks space and time to express and connect with each other in that way. It's not frivolous. It is essential. It is essential, and it is, you know, we talk about it as, like, arts are not the cherry on top; they're the sugar in the ice cream. And it's like, if you bake it into the ingredients of the place and of the practice, what you'll have is more fun, first of all, but you'll also just have more of a I think, meaningful connection and a long-staying connection when folks are able to express themselves and share in that way. So, you know, my answer is, for the work we do, is we invest in those rural arts and cultural workers who are at home. So one of our programs, Ignite Rural, invests in local arts leaders to do their work with their people in their place. And our Beyond the Clock podcast lifts up artists who are doing their work in their place and trying to tell those stories, to trying to shift the narrative around what's actually happening in rural places and who are the people leading the charge and what does that look like. And then again, like, helping communities create these spaces of possibility in creative community gathering places, third spaces we can just hang out and get to know each other. This is all vital. We are also a tiny little nonprofit with 9 staff spread out across 4 states, trying to do, partnering with a lot of other nonprofits. But we're doing what we can to redistribute the resources as best as we can to the people doing the good work. But I also just think, if when you hear it takes time or it takes trust, and you're like, oh my God, my plate is so full already, I can't possibly do that. I mean, I just want to engage an artist to work with your organization to help come up with some engagement strategies to help you all get to know the rural places in your service area better as well. You don't have to do it all alone. There's a lot of us doing this work. If you want to partner with us or partner with other folks that have those connections, we can point you in the direction of so many incredible organizations or individuals. You don't have to do it alone, but it does take that effort and that outreach and that time. And I do think that artists can be valuable not only on the ground, but in that systems thinking work of how we are engaging with rural people and places in general, and having those conversations cross-sector.
When we keep looking at the same problem the same way, I think my grandmother would say, you keep trying to go in the door and it's locked, and you turn the other direction and there's a window. So stop trying the door, go a different direction. And I just really appreciate that you're bringing up cultural centers and the cultural pieces that are really critical, because we look around and we're like, how many of you are golfers and or tennis players? You play tennis once a month for your life or for a year, and you're a tennis player. You sing in the shower, you sing in the church choir, you play guitar on your porch. You're an artist. We have artists everywhere. And we don't call ourselves artists because there's a fear of I'm not a real artist. Okay, so then what is a real artist? Winner, talk about some of the projects that you're doing in Missouri.
I'm not a real artist. Loneliness, mental health. Earlier this year, we had a grant round, $250,000, regional grant round. So Springfield agencies not eligible to apply. And which, that's a side note. Sometimes our rural nonprofits, often, they don't have grant writers. So we design our grant opportunities where sometimes they're just for Springfield, sometimes they're just for the region, and then sometimes they compete against each other. But that's something to be cognizant of if you're working in a couple of places, because it's not always apples to apples on grant applications that come in. So anyway, side note. $250,000 youth mental health out in any of our counties, not Springfield, Greene County, so 62 out of the 63 counties. We always receive more than $1 million in requests for that $250,000. The subject area changes annually, but this year was youth mental health. Most of the recipients were school districts, and one sticks out to me in particular, Fair Play, Missouri. K through 12, they have 350 students, I believe that's right. And the counselor, there's just one counselor, school counselor, right, came to accept the grant check. And I will say, we do, also side note, we do this in person where we give the grants, but have asked those groups if that's okay that they travel, and they do actually appreciate hearing from each other. So they travel to Springfield to receive these grant checks. But we have asked, would you prefer if we just mail them to you? And they're like, no, we actually really like being together for this one. Okay, great, happy to do it then. She got up to take the grant check crying because it was $18,000. And that she said in front of everyone that $18,000 means that no student in their school district will not see a mental health professional because of a copay, which was what was holding a bunch of their rural students back ever again. And we were all having a hard time keeping it together at that particular point. It's one of the most impactful grant rounds and stories from the grantees that we've had in a really long time. And I didn't bring the statistics with me because I'm not always the best at statistics, but the rural mental health providers are really few and far between. And so access for anyone of any age, but particularly a student, 21 and under, to have access to that is darn near impossible to find.
What's the cost of the copay?
$15 in some cases, maybe 50. But for some families, that's choosing between food, medicine, utilities. You all know all this. It's the grantees day in and day out. But to have a school counselor, I could see that she already knew the 5 students that this was immediately, she was making the list in her head. Is how can you be mad at this work ever?
It is a great opportunity, and we feel very fortunate to be in this spot, right? It's a gift to be able to share this gift of philanthropy with communities that we work with by letting them drive the bus, really.
And can I just jump in on that? You said
please.
it's $18,000 grant, right? And just to say too, earlier you mentioned one of the cultural values around resilience, and what I was hearing also is resourcefulness. And our Activate Rural grants are our last round. We were able to redistribute $25,000 per community project, and each across the board, the community was able to leverage that money, and every $1 turned into $4.30. And so they were able to, leverage those resources to get a lot more, but then move their projects much further along with an investment of $25,000. Now, I'm hesitant to say that too much, because often what happens is when we say rural can do more with less, what then that equates to is y'all giving us less. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying think of what's possible if you gave us the same amount as you're giving the urban counterparts, and re-tipping the scales back towards the place of equity. We can do a lot more with less because we're used to it, but we shouldn't have to. And you will be amazed by the impact that your dollar can have in a rural space.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing folks really bootstrap it across urban, rural, nonprofit sector in general. They're really trying to make it work because the dollars, there's fear that those dollars are going to go away or they're shifting. And so really trying to have those conversations and be connected. So I want to really take it a different direction here just for a minute and talk about disaster relief and philanthropy. We talk about hidden disasters in rural places because often the attention goes to bigger places that we see mass impact. That's where the news shows up. It's where everybody wants to be and talk about. But in rural places, Winter, I know this is top of mind for you specifically because of the tornadoes across Missouri this last spring. Can you give us just a lay of the land a little bit about how the Community Foundation of the Ozarks mobilized and worked with your affiliates?
This has been the most active spring tornado season that I can remember. And so just this year alone, we have 8 affiliates that were impacted in some form or fashion due to tornado or high winds. So 8 community disaster funds that we help stand up typically in 48 hours or less. Community Foundation of the Ozarks is fortunate to be written into Community Organizations Active in Disaster Plan for our area. So we are the philanthropic response. So that's not a question. So that would be something I would, if your foundation is at all interested in disaster or being a part of that, I would talk to your co-ad group about being the philanthropic response. So there's no conversation of who's on first when those things happen. The challenge is always getting the money out. Community foundation funds should never be the first line defense. We are not, providing the water bottles and the hotel rooms for folks who are displaced from houses. That's just not how we believe that our work. We're always in long-term recovery. And so typically that looks like partnering with some of the other nonprofits in town that will need those resources. Again, those local folks making the decisions locally, not the staff sitting in Springfield in the central office making those decisions. It's been tornadoes this year. Some seasons it's floods. In our area, floods are the most hidden, in my opinion, and actually the hardest dollars to spend, or that's been our experience through the years. So that can be kind of a challenge as well. We know a little bit more about disaster philanthropy than I wish we did.
I think we all learn the hard way,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with disaster philanthropy. So knowing that there are folks that have been through this work is really critical. In Oregon, we've been involved with the Center for Disaster Philanthropy for several years after our devastating 2020 wildfire season, and we've had consistent several years of horrific fires, losing between 500,000 and 1 million acres of land to wildfires. At CDP, or Center for Disaster Philanthropy, they have a saying that all funders are disaster funders. And I think that's really important because after a disaster, whether it's a wildfire, a tornado, a hurricane, or a flood, it's not just about rebuilding the infrastructure and homes and businesses. There's this layer of cultural preservation and restoration and community building that's really critical. Ash, I know you do some work in that space.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't do direct emergency services as an organization. Individually, we're all very active in our communities, and a lot of the artists that we work with are leading the organizing efforts around mutual aid efforts in their communities and planning and preparing for disaster as a part of that. So I think, making sure that y'all have those connections to the local organizers that are set up for those mutual aid efforts locally is what we're hearing from the artist organizers in the communities we work with. I wanted to just share a story from one of our artist friends we just featured on our Beyond the Clock podcast and event series. Her name's Lacey Hale. She's an artist in Eastern Kentucky. One of her more well-known projects is called No Hate in My Holler, which was a kind of action against a white power group that was coming into their region to recruit folks that mobilized a movement. And she became quite a voice and spokesperson for this movement that grew nationally and even internationally. No Hate in My Holler. Check out Lacey Hale, support her work. But she said after the last round of floods in Kentucky, the thing that was the most devastating to her was seeing the comments on social media from folks outside of the region saying they got what they voted for. And that dehumanization of what's happening in rural places, of this idea of that's not my problem, or they got what they voted for, and just it doesn't matter who you voted for. These are lives we're talking about in this moment, and how dare you? But we've become so we've dehumanized the other so much in this country that we can say that is appalling, and we have a lot of work to do as a society to repair that, so that we do actually care about our neighbors across geography. We are all one civic body. This is one country. And if 20% of our civic body has been disinvested in for generations, just imagine 20% of your body not being nurtured or getting the nutrients it needs. You would want to tend to that immediately. The atrophy there would be severe. And that's what we're facing. This is one civic body. We should not be pointing these kinds of fingers that say you get what you voted for. So I think in addition to being proactive in regards to how we're supporting mutual aid efforts locally and organizers, artist organizers, we need to tend to this bigger issue as well of how do we rehumanize each other in this conversation so that we can really care about our neighbors regardless of how many people live in that zip code.
Yeah. Well, and it brings us back to rural and urban being interconnected, right? Our food, our energy, our data centers, our warehouses, our shipping facilities are all based in these rural places. Oftentimes, they're there, many of those larger, newer items are there without a tax base because they're there as part of an enterprise zone or some another incentive to bring them to community. So local schools also receive, and local emergency services are not receiving that same investment that we would see in other places. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. As we get towards the end here, tell us a little bit. There's a mix of folks listening. There's a mix of folks in the audience. Some are CEOs, some are board chairs, some are program staff. If people are enthusiastic about serving rural and indigenous communities, what's a great takeaway? What's your go-to for them to be like, I'm getting to work tomorrow and it's going to look like this?
Get in the car and drive. The end. Just block it out on your calendar, get in the car and drive. to whatever that place is, if it's 30 minutes or 2 hours, and do it more than once, please. That starts the conversation because you can't. I am a working mom. My kids are 8 and 5. Efficiency is like the name of the game in my life because it's the only way to make all the things happen. So I love Zoom. That's like one of the good things that came out of the pandemic, right? When you serve 63 counties, is now you can talk to people via Zoom. But it still doesn't take the place of getting in the car and driving to the place. So, the end. All right.
Get dirt on your boots, right?
Yes.
Dirt on your
yes.
boots. Come
And
smell
don't
my
wear high
place.
heels. Sorry. Okay. All right.
Yeah, we talk about that too. Like, come smell my place. You need to smell it. And the sensual aspect of it, like to really feel it. Since we're talking to this particular audience, I would say visit your funding portfolio and whatever you're giving to rural, double it. And you still won't be at that 20%. If you're giving 0, do better.
I think that's a great takeaway. It's the mic drop, but we're not finished. There's more. This theme of building relationships and funding, and it's seeing the sameness through our uniqueness. Rural people and communities in general, regardless of their geographic location, are so proud of who they are as a community, and there's some value in that. And recognizing that through all of those unique different things, right? The rural West, I talk about size, scope, and scale all the time. The size, scope, and scale of the West, and I am biased. I was born and raised in Oregon. I love Oregon. It's big. You have 105 counties in Missouri, Winter. We have, did I get that right? 110? Doesn't.
Somewhere, I'm not good at statistics.
There's a
Aaron.
lot of
Okay.
counties in Missouri, folks. There are 36 in Oregon, one of which is the same size, 10,000 square miles, as some of our eastern seaboard states. So they're huge places. It's just this vastness to the west. And I traveled last year to Philadelphia and did a rural visit to New Jersey. Rural New Jersey, and I know there's folks here from New Jersey, so I was so excited to go see these places and the farmland and the forest lands, and they were so proud to tell me of their 200,000 acres in the whole state reserved for agriculture. And I went, really? 200? That's it? I mean, we have one rancher that has 500,000 acres of grazing rights, and so we have bias within each other, within our own rural places, looking across and going, hell, wait a minute, you're rural, but I'm 6 hours from where decisions are made in my state, and you're 30 minutes, so we have work to do within our own rural communities, but I think the sameness through our uniqueness is the most important thing. That's my bumper sticker. What is your bumper sticker for folks to leave with today?
You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yes, and I'm gonna say the same thing. We're people too. Rural folks are not green with 3 heads that walk on our hands. It's just the same conversation. It just looks a little different, and you have to drive a little farther to get in between. But you are right, Aaron, about that. Like, are you rural enough? There is that whole conversation that rural has to also have as well, which is also an interesting topic, not for today, but.
I think my bumper sticker is small town, big teeth. So, and I'd like to unpack that a little bit. Is like we got big teeth, and when we're smiling at you, we're smiling real big. But when we're biting, man, the teeth go in deep. And I think that also has, like, the teeth going in deep also means a lot of things too, right? Like, we can really get in there and dig in there and make things happen. But also, like, don't piss us off. Small town, big teeth.
I love that. Well, Winter and Ash, thank you so much for joining me today. Winter Kinney is the president and CEO of the Community Foundation of the Ozarks in Springfield, Missouri, and Ash Hansen, the creative executive officer of the Department of Public Transformation in Granite Falls, Minnesota. I want to say, oh yes, big round of applause. A very special thank you to the Council on Foundations and to all of you here live. This is our first experience doing Funding Rural Live, so thank you so much for being here. Really excited to be at the Leading Locally conference in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm Erin Borla. Thanks for listening to Funding Rural.
My name is Kayla Milligan, and I'm the Director of Philanthropy at the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain. And my sister is a cultural worker and always says that relationships are our most abundant resource. And so my wish for my community is that we remember our interconnectedness and remember how fortunate we are to have one another and the collective responsibility we have to help make our communities a better place to live and work.
My name is Dave Baker. I'm coming to you from Grand Rapids, Michigan and Washington, D.C. with the Bittersweet community. My one hope or wish is that we come together and we can create for flourishing for all people, and we can just really create for positive change in this world.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Chavez. I'm the CEO and president of the Arizona Community Foundation. One wish I have for my home state is that we continue to think big, include everybody around the table, and ensure that the future is bright for everyone.
Hi, I'm Dan Winslow. I'm the president and CEO of the New Hanover Community Endowment, the endowment in Cape Fear, North Carolina. A wish I have for our community is that we can take our $1.5 billion foundation and leverage it to create a social innovation laboratory in our community where we start to solve the root causes of so many of the challenges that confront our people and our members of our community and lift everybody up by our efforts.
My name is Brianna Kochka. I'm with the Minnesota Council on Foundations, and my hope or wish for my community is that we're able to continue to bridge across difference so that we can make this a great place for all different types of people that come from different backgrounds and want to live together harmoniously.
Hi, my name is Yujin Kang. I'm the Director of DEI Programs here at the Council. And one thing I wish for my communities is rest, lots of ease, and the courage to be completely yourself and remember your gifts and know that no one has to give you permission to do that.
Hi, I'm Jay Williams, President and CEO of the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. A wish that I have for my community is that during these very difficult times, we remember that despite healthy political differences that exist in every democracy, that we continue to come together to build a diverse and equitable and inclusive community. There is nothing more important for us to, even in these difficult times, to do that. And I hope that that's something that we always remember and navigate through these most pressing times.
Good day. So I am singing as you guys go to your next. Oh, you had lunch already, but this song is about, there are people in your life that you trust who would have your back. You can have like 1 million Facebook friends, but they don't all have your back. And when I meet people, I always think that about them. Would they have my back? Probably because you guys, I am also, you can't tell by looking at me, but I am a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Thank you. Fighting fear with both of my fists. Landing right hooks seems so useless. Put down the gloves and pray instead. St. John reminds me that the fear's in your head. Big brother gave me my name, about standing calm in the tempest. St. John on my left, Big Brother on my right. beast is coming fast, and he's hungry for a fight. Fire falls all around us, with harder times on the horizon, advancing online with money signs in their eyes, and my gentle, angry heart raging inside. This is my homeland, and I've sworn to protect it from all enemies, foreign and domestic. My suit of armor made of Copenhagen lids, deflect and protect, 'cause the beast never sleeps. Fire falls all around us, with harder times on the horizon, advancing online with money signs in their eyes, and my gentle, angry heart raging inside. St. John and Miquam, they help me to be brave. One lands the right hooks and the other one prays. Fire falls all around us, with harder times on the horizon, advancing online with money signs in their eyes, and my gentle, angry heart raging inside. Thank you. I'm gonna do one more thing. I wasn't gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it. You're talking about rural and indigenous, and I want to share a song with you, because we have ceremonies and we pray, and sometimes we're not supposed to share certain songs in public, but this is a helper song, and there's nothing wrong with asking for help. In fact, we have to ask for help, because you know, even if you're Christian, you know, they all don't infringe on your free will. You have to ask. So I'm going to sing a song. But thank you for listening. Wrong chord. Thank you. So there is a lot to do. And my mom, she went down to Chiapas in 1996. And when she came home, she said, I learned something. She said, I learned that no matter what we do, it'll never be enough. But you can do too little. Thank you, Miigwech.